Hello, good afternoon. So I'm Gada Endick, and I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate Student Life. Zoe is my partner in graduate student affinity groups. She's my intern. She is a fourth year psychology student, and she is here in spirit. She is at a conference today presenting. Okay, I'm going to just real quickly just kind of give, in the interest of time, just a quick overview for the Office of Graduate Student Life. The main mission of the office is to really enhance the educational experience and the quality of life of all of our graduate students on the New Brunswick campus. So we have 8 graduate schools. We have about 10,000 students across those 8 graduate schools, and that does not include our medical schools or any of the students that are associated in our health professions, such as nursing, public health, and if you include those, that's actually almost 15,000 students. But that's kind of the greater context in terms of just grad students. And really, the office is here to help students connect to each other, help them navigate resources, create a sense of belonging, that they are part of this greater university, and they know everything that it has to offer. So this is one of our initiatives that we launched in last year with an IDEA Innovation Grant. So thank you, that was wonderful. The Graduate Student Affinity Groups ran for 2 academic semesters, last spring and last fall. And really the core of these groups is to really help graduate students build community. I started in this role about 2 years ago when I did an initial needs assessment. One of the top themes that really came up from graduate students across all the disciplines is they're feeling isolated. They need to connect with students outside of their disciplines and just make connections. So that is really at the heart of these affinity groups, and also gathering around shared experiences, shared identities, and also giving students an opportunity to share space with other students, communicate their challenges, and be able to kind of problem solve together. This really emerged from the School of Graduate Studies has a DEI Graduate Student Advisory Committee, and this was really the advocacy and the voices of the students on that committee. The School of Graduate Studies is our largest grad school on the New Brunswick campus. It has 5,000 of our 10,000 students, so it's quite large. Again, supported by an IDEA Innovation Grant. This was really done in partnership with the School of Graduate Studies. As we moved through past the first academic semester in the spring, went into summer and then the fall, with some personnel changes, but also really thinking about sustainability and how do we ensure long-term that these communities continue. Graduate student affinity groups are now solely housed in graduate student life in the Division of Student Affairs. So that's all the administration and support of the program, and Zoe and I do that together, so in conjunction. These students were provided an orientation, various training at the very start as peer facilitators, and then throughout whatever they needed, we provided them support. The structure is, at the heart of the graduate student affinity group is the peer facilitator. These are peer-designed, peer-led groups, and they are really at the heart of this initiative. We had peer mentors in the first academic semester, but after some assessment with the peer mentors, we decided to sunset that. There are advisors that serve and are there as needed. They are staff from the cultural centers, staff from Global, and also CAPS. And then program coordinators would be myself and Zoe. So you'll see there are 6 affinity groups. When we started, there was 7 affinity groups. On the initial slide, there was one Eastern European. Unfortunately, there was not interest in that group, so it was not able to be run. This is just a snapshot of the students who expressed interest in the affinity groups. So you'll see all 3 semesters, and we just finished the big push for spring 2025. And I will say these groups are still open. We do not close. If a student is interested and you find a student that could really benefit, all you have to do is kind of share the information with them from our website, and they can join at any time. But really the big push and promotion was done at the start of the year. So you'll see, in terms of looking at some of these totals, Individual students who expressed interest, that was 258 students, which is really just an amazing number in terms of, to really, I think, demonstrate the need. And then if you were to take into account the students who checked more than one box, and there were many who checked 1 to 2 boxes or even 3, that would take that number up to 420. Who are these students? Actually, they're quite represented across all the 8 graduate schools, plus more. So it did even come into play in terms of our students in RBHS. Pharmacy, we even had a student from Camden and Newark express interest. Okay, so successes, challenges, and lesson learned. Our successes was really allowing for student facilitators to shape these groups. This is very student-centered groups. There are no faculty or staff in these spaces. They are purely peer-led, so really allowing the student facilitators and the community members to come to an agreement as to what the group is about. Is this solely social? Is it a combination of social and where they spend time talking about challenges? So we really let the facilitators guide that process. They allowed for really sub-umbrella identities to be uplifted and empowered. And if you saw on the previous slide, for example, we have a huge international students group, and we have a sub of the Chinese student group was also. So it really allowed for some of those sub-umbrella identities to focus and create space for them. The participants' feedback was overwhelmingly, they joined these communities for community and connections. That was the greatest theme across all the students who signed up. And again, student-centered gatherings and meetings, no staff or faculty are in these spaces. There's actually no communication to the students from even myself besides the initial interaction with them over email, letting them know about the Affinity group. And then lastly, the skill development of the facilitators. And this really was a wide spectrum in terms of development, because some of the facilitators actually came in to this process having a lot of experience and some had none. So we saw a lot of growth in the facilitators, the skill development and personal and professional development. Some of the challenges, this will not be a shocker to anyone in this room, is the #1 challenge was finding a common meeting day and time. So the unicorn time that every student is going to make it was extremely, extremely challenging, which of course then would lead to lower attendance in meetings. And even if the students said that they were coming, sometimes they did not show up, which we all know and feel that. So that made it a little challenging for our facilitators, because it did feel a little deflating, because they put a lot of time and effort into what was that meeting going to be about. The feedback of the students who did not or were not able to participate, they had expressed interest in some form of virtual engagement. So even though they can't make any of the meetings or gatherings, what are some ways that they could still be engaged? And part of that is making sure that the facilitators use some other communication platform, and whatever that may be, WhatsApp, WeChat, GroupMe, that was really an important piece. So many students were not able to participate, but really want to, so trying to figure that out. The support needed for administrative aspects. At the start of this, we did not have kind of like a process and a structure and timelines. We're all good now, we have that down pat, but it did cause for some issues early on in terms of booking space, ordering food, all of that. These are not graduate student organizations. There is no built-in leadership structure, so that is something we're looking at for future, for sustainability, and then lastly, assessing and collecting the student experiences. Lesson learned, and some of them were already mentioned, the facilitators really need flexibility and autonomy to lead these groups. And if there was a time where we were stepping and overstepping, they made that known to us, that these are student-centered and exclusive spaces for students, and to maintain the integrity of that. Making sure to set up early on, letting folks know in terms of what the role of the advisor is. So these are advisors that are there as needed. They're not a traditional advisor in terms of where they're meeting regularly with these individuals. So that was an important piece that we recognize we need to continue to communicate. The need, again, to build structure and expectations. Don't email me 2 days before and ask me for, catering from Effie's or pizza. It's really just, it's a challenge. So, but we have that down pat now. We've let the facilitators know how much time we need, but also where to order from, right? Because we all know the challenge is a marketplace. You want to make sure you can pay the vendor. Reducing required team meetings. Our facilitators were very clear about this. Too many meetings, and it was only once a month. group meetings. So now we've moved into a model of more one-on-one meetings and as needed. So some facilitators we meet with pretty regularly and some we don't. And one of the key things that we really noticed about these affinity groups, the groups that did some sort of welcome, meet and greet, kickoff, however you want to name it, in the first 2.5 weeks, had a very, very strong response at those events, and then that continued throughout the subsequent meetings. So this is a pretty important piece for future engagement. And then lastly, all the facilitators have some sort of platform that they're connecting outside. And then this is really just where we are now. We're running 5 groups, and this is our African student group, and we're currently working with the student facilitators to identify new leads. So they're looking within their groups to identify a student who could be in training to encourage and to make sure these 5 groups continue. And we are still in the process of recruiting for new graduate affinity group facilitators. And we've also kind of broadened the scope of the affinity group. It actually could be a group of students coming together to solve a problem. It could be a working group, tackle an issue, so something to keep in mind. So if you know of any students, please encourage them to apply before Friday. And then lastly, really conversations with our peer institutions who've been at this a lot longer in terms of what are the best practices for sustainability for peer-led affinity groups. And that's it. Thank you.
So I think if there, I think as we're seeing if there are questions in the chat and also in the room to give you your 7 awkward seconds to think. I think for me, the question I'm having, because graduate students may be coming at different times in their life to be able to pursue graduate school, how do you manage the kind of, could be intergenerational or just the different needs for folks at different stages of life within the affinity space?
I think for the students, looking at some of these groups, they really, and again, I don't know every student who's participating in every group, but they're very welcoming spaces. So I have seen a student participate in one of these groups who's a grad student parent, for example, but it does have to click for them. So in terms of them signing up, the community, the vibe that they feel within that community, it does have to connect. So, and if it doesn't, that's why there's, for my office, a lot of the focus has been on creating other opportunities for students, knowing that our grad students are very diverse. So for example, grad student parents is a whole other group that we are dedicating a lot of time and effort to supporting those students. First-gen students have, when I did an initial program, I didn't even know who the first-gen students were, but when I did an initial program to welcome them into my office, there was an overwhelming number of students who came. So that's something kind of moving forward. So graduate student life, as we look forward, we really are going to need to continue to break down the spaces and the support and initiatives to really look at all the vast different diversity of our grad students. And it is a challenge, for sure. And that's where a lot of partners come in. We do a lot of heavy partnering with folks in this room, but also the graduate schools with some of the we've had conversations with the equity advisors group. So where can we collaborate and do more, knowing that this population is very, very diverse in their experiences, age, whatever it may be.
Thank you. Any other questions in the room or online?
We have a question online.
Online, please.
What is the prevalence of master's students in the affinity groups versus the PhD students?
Wait, so the master's?
Yes.
What's the difference?
The prevalence.
Yeah, so between master's and PhD students, is there a big difference?
Overwhelmingly, these students are PhD students because they're all, the majority of them are coming from the School of Graduate Studies, and that's our PhD conferring grad school. So when we have broken down the numbers, and I have that in another space, so if folks want to know more detail about the actual breakdown, how many came from, the Blaustein School, how many came from GSE, and all the, professional schools, but overwhelmingly it is the School of Graduate Studies. So it is heavy on the PhD side.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.